Morning. Happy PGP. Mike Orcutt. I'm the founding editor of Project Glitch. I'll be doing the moderating the panel after this. This morning we're going to try something a little new, and check in with Veronica Irwin. She's an independent reporter who is constantly talking with her sources on the Hill, always trying to find the signal in the noise. Even though she's based in New York, she's virtually here in DC, given how connected she is. So Veronica, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
The big topic, of course, is the Genius Act, a topic that Veronica recently wrote about for Project Glitch. You can check that out at projectglitch.xyz. So Veronica, quickly bring us up to speed with the status of the Genius bill. We had a little bit of an update earlier, but from your perspective as a reporter, talking to lots of people, what are the things that we need to know right now? When is the vote? How are the prospects for passing? And anything else that we should keep in mind?
Yeah, it's been a chaotic couple of weeks. Anybody who's been watching the coverage here, I believe it was said earlier, but the floor vote in the Senate for the Genius Act is going to be around 4:30 p.m. today. They tend to run a little bit late, but around 4:30 is when you should tune in. And everybody seems to expect that it will pass. You might have heard the word cloture a lot in the last couple of weeks. That's a procedural vote that happens before something goes to a floor vote, but it requires more buy-in. It requires 60 votes to pass cloture. Meanwhile, the bill you only need a sheer majority. So because we've passed cloture and because a lot of Democrats were kind of putting the pressure on for the cloture vote, if we've gotten past that, everybody's expecting the bill itself to pass later today.
Let's get a little bit past the process and look a little bit more closely at the implications. So the bill has a counterpart in the House, as we talked about earlier today. But let's assume that Genius passes, the two houses agree on what to send to the president's desk, and then he signs it. So what are the important things that this bill requires stablecoin issuers to do?
Yeah, at a high level, it is defining what a stablecoin is. That was something that pretty much everybody agreed needed to happen, and specifically to make sure that algorithmic stablecoins are not considered a permitted stablecoin under this law. It sets what the reserve requirements are. So for a stablecoin to be a permitted stablecoin, it has to be one-to-one backed by dollar or dollar equivalent assets. A lot of the stablecoins that expect to be regulated use treasuries, for example, to back the tokens. And then there's this state and federal divide that is setting up like a registration framework. So stablecoins above a $10 billion market cap, which is most of the ones that you're familiar with, would have to register at the federal level, and they would be registering with the OCC, and that is a bank regulator, so it's like a bank-like registration framework. And then for the smaller stablecoins, they can register at the state level. Those that are under 10 billion, which honestly are very hard to find. They're probably not the ones that you're familiar with, but those basically have the option to be regulated at a state level if they don't, ever intend to become bigger than $10 billion.
Okay, so let's make it a little bit more concrete and use the example of Tether, which I think everyone is familiar with because of how dominant it is in the stablecoin market. So what does this bill mean for Tether?
That is the question, I think, for a lot of reporters, and why you might not see too much coverage directly on what this means for Tether is because it's been fluctuating a lot at every stage. In broad strokes, this bill wants to the goal of this bill is to incentivize stablecoin issuers to come onshore and build this industry in the United States. But Tether is the biggest stablecoin by a huge margin, and they are issuing overseas. Their headquarters is currently in El Salvador, but I believe the company is based in the British Virgin Islands, and it's all a little bit weird. They haven't been as transparent as I think a lot of regulators want them to be. At the same time, there is a concern that if you cut Tether entirely out of the market, that would have huge market effects for American crypto companies. So where things stand right now, and this is a huge caveat because the most up-to-date text that's on congress.gov is from May 5th. The most up-to-date text that I have is from May 14th. It's June 17th, so things might have changed. But it basically, as it stands right now, Tether is not explicitly banned, but they would have to definitely make some business changes to comply with this bill. So the bill allows overseas issued stablecoins to operate with US companies so long as they are able to comply with US law enforcement. And also, the Treasury Department has to basically sanction or not sanction, approve the regime of the government that they are in. So Treasury would basically have to say, hey, Tether, you are issuing in a country that we think has a similar enough framework to what's in the United States, and Treasury has to be transparent about, what they base that evaluation off of. Um, and it's unclear whether Tether is going to do all of that. Paolo, the CEO, has been kind of dodging that question. He has not explicitly said it in interviews, and he has been asked about it, but you have seen him floating other options for Tether. So you've seen him most recently in Bloomberg saying, what if we issue a US version of the Tether stablecoin? And you've also seen him just kind of flirting with other business lines for Tether that are not so dependent on the US regulatory regime.
Yeah, definitely something to watch there.
Mhm.
Okay, let's shift to the Clarity Act, and we'll wrap this up. But similar to how you brought us up to speed with Genius, can you do the same for Clarity? Where are we with that
Yeah, so
process?
Clarity is the market structure bill in the House. We saw it basically go through stage one, which is it passed through the two committees which are relevant. That is the House Agriculture Committee and the House Financial Services Committee. The vote was much more bipartisan in the Agriculture Committee than in House Financial Services. It barely seemed to get any Democrats in the House Financial Services Committee. So that all raises the question, what now? There are some slight differences between the Ag Committee's version and the House Financial Services Committee's version that they have to work out. Nobody seems really concerned, though, about whether they will. It's more about when is this going to be ready for a House floor vote. um, the Clarity Act faces a lot more opposition from Democrats, and the odds of it passing seem a lot less likely than stablecoin legislation. So it's kind of a game now of a lot of behind the scenes maneuvering to make sure the votes would be in line before that House floor discussion really starts.
And when you say that it's a little bit more politically complicated, there's more opposition, especially from the Democratic side. Are there specific reasons for that, or is it just that it's so much more of a complicated bill that there's just a lot more surface area to criticize?
There's so many reasons. I could go on and probably write multiple articles about all of the reasons why there's more opposition to the bill. But at a very high level, the Clarity Act is designed to lay out a market structure, right? Like, it's a very expansive mandate for this bill. It is laying down what the rules of the road are for all of the intermediaries. It's deciding which tokens are securities and commodities, and which regulator is responsible for managing each part of the market. And so there's just a lot more opportunities for people to disagree. There's a lot more like points of failure here. There's also a lot of interesting politics going on here. Right now, you see the Democrats as a party kind of trying to find ways to really oppose the president. They are seeing that as a political win. And so, with given the president's crypto businesses, you're seeing a lot of opposition to this bill, just like as a way to signal we are anti-Trump from the Democrats. An interesting part of this also is like Maxine Waters who is the ranking member and the senior Democrat on the House Financial Services Committee, is probably not going to run again. She's 86. This is probably her final term. And they changed the rules in the House recently, where instead of it being strict seniority of who will take her place, there's actually kind of a little bit of an election behind the scenes. So you see every Democrat on the House Financial Services Committee, especially, that thinks they could get Maxine Waters' role as ranking member, trying to really posture on this bill and pretty much anything else that goes through committee. Um, there's some procedural issues that you see even moderate Democrats getting upset about, where apparently the SEC is only providing technical support to the Republicans and not the Democrats on the House Financial Services Committee. This is a very complicated bill. some Democrats find that to be like the issue to fight over, is that they're just not getting the technical expertise to kind of understand what they are voting on. So I could go on and on, but those are just some of the points
A
of
lot going
failure.
on. Very
Yeah.
noisy, for sure. Thanks for helping us find a little bit of a signal. Where can people follow you online and find you online and follow your work?
Yeah, so as you said, am independent now. That's a new update for me. So I am writing in a lot of different places. I'd say the easiest way to keep up with everything I'm publishing is on Twitter or X. My at is VRONIRWIN. But I do also have my own newsletter on Substack called Decrypting DC, where I'm publishing scoops and breaking information. I am writing for Project Glitch. And then I also have a weekly column in the Brogan Law newsletter, also on Substack, and that's BROGAN.
Cool. Thanks a lot, Veronica.
Thank you so much.